In this video, I want to follow up with some more newspaper design, and I'm going to concentrate on typographic hierarchy for this discussion. We looked a little bit at visual entry points and so on in the last video, and I can point some of these things out as well in this layout. But this one is actually going to be a little bit more visually interesting, in my opinion. So if we look at the overall page from kind of a bird's eye view, zooming out, you can see that generally things are going to get larger to smaller as we go down, with the exception of this headline here. And I'll explain why that headline is large like the other ones. So as a rule of thumb, headlines will descend in size the further down they go in the layout. Now, there's a term called above the fold, and above the fold originates from the newspaper business. So if you look at this page design, if you buy a newspaper, the newspaper is almost always folded in half. You never walk up and just like buy a newspaper and it's completely unfolded because of the length of the page. So it's folded in half. And so the idea is that the most visually interesting stuff is on the top half of the page. And so this refers to things being either above the fold or below the fold. And the fold is basically the halfway point in the design, right? If we just fold the page in half. This also translates over to web design. The term is interchangeable, and they'll say above the fold, meaning things that are in the top half of the web page. And so what you want to do is make sure you have at least one large captivating headline that's above the fold, if not more. And you want to have some piece of art. So in the newspaper business, any graphic, whether it's a picture or a graphic, an information graphic, anything, a weather map, anything like that, any visual thing, any graphic file is referred to as art. Okay, then that's a term in the publishing business. And it's not just newspapers. If you go work for a book publishing company, everything is going to be referred to as art that's a graphic file. Same thing with the magazine business. And some of you may find work in any one of those fields. And so you just need to be aware of that term. So generally things go from large to small. However, if you rigidly stick to that, where you only make your deadlines, or your headlines rather, just get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, you'll end up with this kind of upside down pyramid type of formation, and your text is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller, and you're going to lose interest when things get smaller. So if we look at this layout is concentrating on what we call a package. So this was like a special edition of the paper. And it's about juvenile prisoners basically being abused in a Texas juvenile facility, that a bunch of things came out. It's kind of like an expose. And so we've got our bomb head, right? Then we've got our subhead underneath it, which explains the information in the bomb head. And then down here we have a related story, and we bumped up this text to be competitive with the larger text, so you know that this is a very important headline, right? So if we were to see something like, we're going to make a newspaper page, and we live in an extraordinary time, so we have, for instance, I don't want to date this lecture, but we got a lot of COVID-19 stuff happening. So if you had a COVID-19 headline up here, it's very major, it's breaking. And then down here you've got like Girl Scout troop, does mail order cookies or something, right? That's going to be less important than something that's life or death. And so the life or death headline, the major headline, is going to be up at the top, and it's going to be bold and big, so you pay attention to it, and it has prominence in the design. And the smaller stuff that might be important to some, but it is less dramatic, is going to be smaller down here, so it has less emphasis. So in typographic hierarchy, smaller is less important, but you want to do things that create visual interest, so you have to break it out a little bit and do things that we're going to basically reinforce some type of visual interest in the story. And so you can do that by making things bold. You can do that by making things have a different alignment sometimes, right? You see here we've got a center alignment and then we left aligned the text. So if I zoom into that to give you a better view, you see down here we've got a centered headline, but then we've got some left aligned justified text here, right? And so these things have a different type of meaning based on their alignment. So trouble at Evans, that's talking about the Evans juvenile facility, and so that gets you to pay attention to it, like, hey, something's going on. Now here's a mistake because there's no actual page that goes to it. That's something that I always hate, because this is actually in my portfolio and I left out the page number where it goes, but you know, we all make mistakes, right? Okay, now over here this is an information graphic, and you can see how typographic hierarchy plays here as well. So what's happening, right? We've got this reverse type, we've got, you know, a breakdown of it, we've got some notes, but then we're spacing things out and we've got text that's bolded a little bit to show that it's a headline. So, or not really a headline, but a new point of discussion, a new subject. And so if you don't do anything to give yourself to give your readers some type of emphasis, to basically say, hey, this is a little bit of separation from the main text, you have to do that with different font faces or different font sizes. So in this case, I'm using a different font face, I'm making it bold, 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 and then underneath it, you will have the regular text, right? And so that spaces things out. Well, it doesn't space things out, but it adds emphasis. And then by creating space between the text, we're also creating emphasis in the typography, because we have a separation point. We have a place where you can breathe when you're going into things. Whenever you stylize your type, you never want to have text touch the edge of a box or a picture. You see how here there's a little bit of air in between that overlay on the white shape. You must have some type of space. You can't have your text just touch the edge. That's going to be really bad in your layout. Okay? All right, and again, see how things get smaller as we get further down, right? So it goes from large to big, and we can look at some different layouts that I have in here too. That was a kind of a special thing that we did here. There's some different portfolio pieces that I have. I want to show you, let's zoom into another page here. There's some other stuff that I got. Okay, other stuff here. Okay, sorry. This one here, I want to show you this graphic. Let me zero out. My PDF is going crazy on me right now. Okay. Command 0. Okay. All right. So I've got some different pieces here that I want to show you, and this one looks like it's getting cut off. Okay. So here's a different layout. Okay. So this is so I'm totally shifting gears from a newspaper page right now, and this is actually a layout for a mobile interface. Okay. So why am I showing you the newspaper and then a mobile interface? Because you're still going to have the same types of things applied with typographic hierarchy to show you emphasis in the design. So if you look at this layout here, okay, where we have a simple interface for a mobile application, you're going to have large information up here that says the name of the doctor, whatever is in the case, and then subsequent information that has the same impact is the same size. Okay, so you see how all of this text, right, has the same size, because that means it has the same visual weight or the same prominence, the same importance. Okay, The same way, let me move my drawing tools here. If I were to go up, let's say to this layout, let me zoom in here on this one, okay? All right, so if we were to look at this layout, a little bit zoomed in here, back out a little bit. You see how the body copy text is all the same size, but your headline text, of course, has to break it out and be larger to create emphasis. All right. You can use different types of effects inside of your layout by using color associations. So this story is basically about Santa Muerte cult spreading from Mexico up into the United States, right, with like drug traffickers and so on. And so as this, basically the idea of this news graphic is all about is that we want to have a connection with Mexico, right? And we want to have a connection with the cult of Santa Muerte, right? And so with that happening, you see what I did color association wise is I used my typography with some color psychology and color harmony to do two things. One, to link the headline with the subject matter here, with the character, and also through the drop cap as well, right? So there's a Gestalt principle called similarity, meaning things that are similar share the same properties, right? So they have the same meaning or the same importance. And so by using similarity in the typography and tying that similarity with the colors roughly in the illustration, right, we can basically say, okay, well, now this illustration connects with this headline, which connects with this drop cap, okay? And notice how the drop cap only goes 3 decks, not 4 decks, even though it looks like it wants to go 4. All right, so that connects those 3 things, right? Now down here, I'm doing another play on this. I'm also connecting this subheadline, basically, or additional piece that goes with this information graphic, to this headline by having the color red, the same red, but I'm also using the colors of the Mexican flag because the story is about this belief starting in Mexico and then spreading out through different countries, okay? And so that's basically the play. I'm using a bunch of color psychology in here trying to tie all these things together, all right? So color harmony can play a role with typography, all right? So you can use the two together, all right? Now remember when we're talking about grouping as well. So we want to group our text, our body copy, with some type of a headline. So by having this here, this colors of death, linked with this text, you know that this is possibly a second related story. And they're separate because of the prominence of the typography, okay? Typographic hierarchy. So let's zoom back, and I had a couple other things going on here, some posters and some different things that aren't really relevant to the lecture, so I'm going to skip back over that. And if you come back over here and look at this design again, remember larger to small, right? And how we have things that are the same importance or similar importance are going to have competitive size in their headlines, right? And things, of course, that are less important are not. So over here, spring breaker killed, dies after fall from rooftop. That's very important. Somebody lost their life, okay? And so that headline has to be bold, and it has to be more important than this, because this is a story about, you know, the police department patrolling for spring breakers in South Padre Island. Yeah, it's important, but it's not as important as somebody losing their life, okay? And so that's why you have a more prominent piece of type. And your typography serves, again, to break up the gray space, to break up the type by adding visual interest into the design, by having things have breakouts that you can quickly jump into and then pull back from to help you read and navigate the layout.